True, according to what our ancestors told us, we do indeed come from Andalusia. After they were expelled from Andalusia, they came to settle down in Fes, in a place called Benadis. We have kept our Andalusian traditions and we still consider ourselves as such.
As-Sa'ir, our surname, means goldsmith. Is this because our ancestors worked as goldsmiths or traders of gold?
Yes, that's true, but they were not only makers of gold, but makers of knowledge.
Many of the Andalusian refugees came from educated families, and it was no accident that they chose to settle in Fes. It's home to one of the greatest universities of the world, Al-Qarawiyyin.
السلام عليكم دكتور لباس بخير عليكم حلباس
Professor Mustafa Ben Sdira has spent his career studying the life of Leo and knows the city that he lived in better than anyone.
I think that Leo probably walked on the ground that we are walking on now, because in his book, The Description of Africa, he talks about Al-Bu'naniya, which is up the road from here.
Do you mean the famous Al-Bu'naniya school?
Indeed, the famous school that was built by Sultan Abu Inan, where Leo said that he studied.
There are almost 200 schools in Fez for the instruction of children. The schoolmasters teach their children to write and read, not out of a book, but from a great chart. Every day, they chant one sentence of the Quran, and having read all the way through, they begin it again, repeating it often until they have most firmly committed it to memory.
When he'd learned the Quran by heart, an achievement most boys managed by the age of 14, Leo enrolled at Al-Qarawiyyin University.
According to Guinness Book of Records, this is the oldest university for higher education in the world. It is not only a mosque, but a place of teaching. The way it was built is so detailed and fine. Leo described it in big detail. He talked about the archways and the water fountains inside it. When you go inside and read his book, you find everything in detail in front of you.
Around the walls of the mosque are pulpits, out of which scholars who are learned in Islamic law instruct the people.
Plenty of tourists come from all over the world to come and see Fes and Old Medina and Al-Qarawiyyin University, which is world famous. But I'm quite sure that a tiny minority of these people have read Leo's description of Fes. And it's amazing because what Westerners know about Fes, they must have learned it from Leo.
Despite his high learning, Leo was able to bring a common touch to capturing the daily life of the ordinary man. Even today, walking through the Medina, the details that caught Leo's eyes are still all around you.
Throughout his life, he called it the city where I was born. His detailed description of its neighborhoods, markets, streets, and even people shows how much he loved this city. It's amazing how Leo's description of Fes is as accurate today as it was 500 years ago. While he was describing the women of Fes, which he found very beautiful, he was describing their nice dress. But he was always shocked to see their golden belts. He found them very, very ugly. Those belts are actually still existing today and they're still being sold in all the Medina of Fes. Personally, I don't think they are ugly. I think they are very beautiful.
The women are not altogether unseemly dressed. When they go out, they put on long breeches that cover their legs, and also in the fashion of Syria, they have a veil hanging down from their heads, which covers their whole bodies. Their ears they adorn with golden earrings and precious jewels.
The description of Africa was originally published in Italian in 1550, then in French and Latin, and eventually in English in 1600. It made Leo a part of the European canon, and his book has been published 30 times, but not in Arabic, not until 1982.
وأنا أبحث في الوثان وجدت إشارة غريبة.
When I was doing my research about Leo, I found a very curious hint. We all assume that his parents were both Muslims, but there is one reference in the Arabic Encyclopedia in the 8th volume which says that Leo's father was Muslim and his mother was a Jew who converted to Islam before marriage.
زواجها ولا ندري هل هذه حقيقة.
We don't know whether this is true and whether this had an influence on his life, or to what extent did it affect his behavior and his ability to adapt everywhere. Because he had a great ability to blend in or assimilate into any society. This is only an assumption and we don't know how true it is.
Every country bears the marks and traditions of other cultures who bring new ideas, languages or habits, even new foods. As a refugee from Spain with a childhood in Morocco and now possibly the child of a converted Jewish woman, Leo was in a unique position to understand that identity is very different from mere nationality or religion.
It wasn't only the Andalusian Muslims who had to flee to Fes. The Jewish population of Granada was treated badly as well, and they had to flee the country. They came and settled down here in this place called Al-Mallah.
They occupy a long street in the city, where they have their shops and synagogues. And the number is marvelously increased ever since they were driven out of Spain.
There used to be tens of thousands of Jews in Fes who could trace their roots back to the fall of Granada. But after the Second World War, many left Morocco. Today there are only a few of them left in Fes. Hidden away in the back streets of the Medina is another significant place in his life. One that might have offered him not only his first paid work as a writer, but might also have given him his first meetings with foreigners.
This is a very important place in the life of Leo. He spent 2 years here working as a scribe.
500 years ago, this building was a bimaristan, a hospital or a refuge for the insane, but also an infirmary for sick foreign travelers.
Occasionally, a foreigner will come near one of the rooms. The madman will call to him and complain that they are being held here for no reason, and that they are subjected to thousands of abuses by the gods.
Now there is barely a memory of Leo here. Certainly, the stallholders are more familiar with the tales of the madman than the hospital's most famous employee. Although for Western tourists, his name is commemorated on a plaque in the courtyard, where the overspill from the tiny mosque that remains still pray 5 times a day. Perhaps here too he witnessed the Muslim tradition of care for the vulnerable and protection and hospitality for travelers. At this time, Leo was also starting to look beyond the pious confines of university and hospital.
In this city are almost 200 inns. None come here but the most lewd and wicked people, so that they may more boldly commit villainy. Only the straight law of history forces me to report this. I would much rather have smothered such matters in silence, as they tend so extremely to the disgrace of Fes.
When it all got too much for him, he made his escape to the countryside.
We are on the way to a little shrine just outside the walls of the city of Fes. We have been told that this little place used to be the spiritual retreat for Leo Africanus. He used to come here every now and then, just to have peace of mind and contemplate.
L'Ubad is a palace built on the top of a high hill. I stayed in this palace 4 times in the summer season because of the fresh air. A secluded place like this is good for whoever wants to study. My father rented this land from the mosque for many years.
Showing me to this little-known place is Professor Mustafa Taher. It offers another key to a hidden facet of Leo's character.
Wow, this is Fes in its full glory. No wonder he loved it. I've lived in this place for 22 years. I've never seen it from this place, and I've never seen it as beautiful as now.
هو يتحدث بأنه يمكن انطلاقا من هذا الجبل الذي يوجد به قصر.
He said, from this vantage point, the Al-Ubad castle, you can see all the lands and the villages around Fes,
اتجاه الجنوب فاس
and even the minarets of the mosques.
منابر المساجد التي توجد بها ومنها يعني ذنتلات.
He was able to do so many things from this place. The castle was his residence, and he always remembers and reveres the people who lived here before him, including the saint called Sidi Ahmed Bernousi, who is buried here. And even though Al-Wazan didn't believe in miracles and saints, this is exactly where we find his dual personality.
Like many great writers, Shakespeare for example, Leo has the habit of immersing himself in the detail of other people's lives, while keeping himself hidden. It's almost as if he had been trained by birth and early experiences to keep his distance and look clearly on the situations he found himself in.
This man lived in 2 environments, the Andalusian and the Fassi Morocco. He sums this up in the story of the amphibious bird and comparing himself to it. God gave this bird the ability to live both in the skies and in the seas. When he's asked to pay taxes in the skies, he goes and lives with the fish in the sea. And when he feels injustice in the sea, he leaves and goes back to the skies with the birds. He says at the end, a human being by nature seeks whatever serves his interests as much as he can.
The author concludes from this that whenever a man sees his advantage, he always follows it.
It's clear that Leo had a privileged upbringing and an exclusive education. And when his student days drew to an end, he was presented to the court of the Sultan of Fes by his well-connected uncle.
Leo's uncle was a trusted envoy of the Sultan of Fes. He was sent on diplomatic missions to different parts in Morocco and beyond. He would often take the young Leo with him on his missions.
This is when Leo gets his first taste of adventure, and it's now that he starts to systematically note and describe what he sees. Despite its title, The Description of Africa, more than half of Leo's book is about Morocco, based on his notes and memories of this time. He is starting to build up a geographic and topographic index of North Africa, something that would later be extremely interesting to his adventurous European readers.
I was taught in the West and describe each of the mountains and each of the towns according to my method. Nearly all the rivers of Africa stem from the Atlas. Its waterfalls are very cold, even in the heat of summer. And the most fertile plains are those between the Atlas and the ocean.
In one of his travels to the Atlas Mountains, Leo stopped in one of the villages around